pleasant day everyone. I am Vivien Ferriol from Lyceum of the Philippines, University Cavite, Bachelor of Arts in Foreign Service. And today, I will give a brief discussion about my research paper in international organization entitled A Historical Analysis on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the Warsaw Pact military competition during the Cold War era. The Cold War era, which was developed and began after the Second World War in the late 1940s, it created major impacts in the world order until it ended in the early 1990s. So unlike the first two World War, the offense and defense of nations involved were waged through political or ideological propaganda and economic fronts, which lessens the use of military and weapons that reduced life casualties. The United States led the Western Bloc, carrying liberal democratic campaigns which promoted a capitalist system of free markets and trade, and the Soviet Union, leading the Eastern Bloc, relied on a communist system in which advocated in the redistribution of wealth. The Western Bloc signed a mutual defense treaty that established the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or the NATO. It is an intergovernmental military alliance in the region to respond in any attacks from external forces. In defense for the foundation of the military pact of the Western Bloc, the Eastern Bloc immediately made a treaty, which is the Warsaw Pact. It is to form a unified military command to maintain the military units of the Soviet Union in its allied nations and other participating countries. Even though stating that its main objective is for the mutual defense alliance in case of attack from the enemies, particularly from the West, it focused much in enhancing the bargaining position of the Soviet in international diplomacy and also to promote further communist dominance in the Eastern Bloc. And as the Western influence grew and grew because of its continuous victory in their competitions and the races, some of the members of the Warsaw Pact expressed their desire to withdraw. The foreign and defense ministers of the nations involved in the Warsaw Treaty Organization met to end and close down the pact in February 25, 1991. So, in the end of the same year, the Soviet Union also collapsed, and afterwards, 7 former member states of Warsaw Pact joined NATO. So, in my analysis for the military competition within the NATO and the Warsaw Pact, when people encounter the term military competition, some might envision armed battles and military strifes with the use of weapons. But during the Cold War, the two military alliances, the Warsaw Pact from the Eastern Bloc and the NATO from the Western Bloc, also had a military competition, but the only difference is that the two military alliances, considered as enemies, did not have any physical confrontations directly. That type of military competition they had was more on a ideological basis on which will have the largest military expansion, engagement, and weaponry in the respective blocks. So an arms race started which lasted throughout the Cold War. In the early 1970s, the Warsaw Pact was running ahead of NATO in enforcing enhanced employment concepts on its forces and other innovative organizational schemes and weapon systems. So the new Soviet vehicles, missiles, and helicopters shocked NATO militaries, forcing them to spend more of the bloc in the research and development of weaponry. So alternatively, NATO's deep conceptual development became operational in the 1977. So the biggest effect was from the forces of NATO than the Warsaw Pact. So this arms race contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union, since in order to keep up with the innovation of the NATO, they used most of the nation's funds for the military development and research of the Warsaw Pact, and the small amount was left no was left to sustain the economy. Through analyzing the military competition between the NATO and the Warsaw Pact during the Cold War, the result of their developments in weaponries were not utilized, since they did not have any physical confrontations. At the same time, these weaponries will not be beneficial in peacemaking, because it will be more of a threat than a peaceful resolution to such conflicts. So, what should be developed and be enhanced throughout time is diplomacy. So, through diplomacy, destructive wars can be prevented while coming with a resolution that could benefit the parties in conflict, which is hitting two birds in one stone. Generally, the military competition between NATO and the Warsaw Pact has a significant contribution to the fall of Soviet Union and the rise of the Western ideologies across the world. The Soviet focused too much in the development of military power, leading the economy and state of its people to crumble. In a way, it also added up to the power that the United States have in order to spread its influence and expand its territories through imperialism and expansionism. So, with NATO functioning with other state and non-state actors in the international arena, its power keeps on spreading now that it has increased its members, and some from the Warsaw Pact also joined in. In this case, even though military power isn't much mobilized today, since diplomacy has been successful in preventing all-out war between states, it is still utilized through different agenda of those that excels in the field, which is it has to be beneficial to all, especially in the international arena. So that ends my short discussion about my research paper on the historical analysis to the NATO and Warsaw Pact military competition during the Cold War era, and I hope that you have learned something in my research, and see you all next time. So, for the last part, I just want to express my gratitude to my professor in this subject, to Sir Jumel Estrañero. Um, Thank you for sharing your knowledge to us. Thank you for being patient and considerate. You were casual. You were very casual and very easy to approach because of your bubbly personality. So thank you for letting us engage in platforms out of the boundaries of our scope, and it surely taught us to look in a wider perspective in aspects not just on politics and in economy or in international organizations, but also in life as a whole. And I appreciate all your efforts in making things light for us, especially now that we are under a health crisis. And we are still hoping to physically meet you one day and be able to learn more from you while having fun. So may God continue to bless you throughout your life. Thank you so much, sir.